this morning, as well as I am very excited to introduce our guest speaker, who is Rebecca Ginsburg. So I'll go ahead and I will follow through with her bio to give you a little bit more background on Rebecca. And then Rebecca will proceed with her presentation to tell you a little bit more about what she's here to talk to you all about today. So Rebecca Ginsburg is a co-founder and current director of the Education Justice Project, EJP, and I am so excited to have you here talking about EJP, which is a unit of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Through its educational programs, publications, and outreach, EJP supports higher education in prison and educational opportunities for individuals who were formerly incarcerated. She holds joint appointments in landscape architecture and education policy, with courtesy appointments in Afro-American studies, African studies, and anthropology. Rebecca received her bachelor's degree in English from Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, her JD from the University of Michigan Law School, and a PhD in architectural history from the University of California at Berkeley. Her publications include critical perspectives on teaching in prison. She currently is working on a prison abolition reader, and Rebecca has been a resident of Urbana-Champaign for 18 years, and she shares the home with her husband, William Sullivan, and her daughters, Anna and Isabel. So please, without further ado, please welcome our guest speaker, Rebecca Ginsburg. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today.
Jasmine, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for the invitation to join you. Do I have capacity to share my, it looks like I can share my screen, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give you what I hope will be a brief presentation. I've scheduled about maybe 30 minutes to provide some background on the Education Justice Project. I think you're likely to find the last part of my presentation most relevant to the work you do, because it concerns our intentions and plans with respect to students here on the Urbana campus. But I want to put that into larger perspective and talk about the work we've been doing for the past 14 years. With Jasmine's support, Jasmine managed not to reveal that she is also part of EJP. I'm really delighted that she is.
Yes.
So let me share my screen. I'm obviously recycled much of this from a previous presentation, and I'm sorry, the title is wrong. It's not an abolitionist pedagogy series, but it is a talk to OMSA, which is to you today. And my email address is there in case you want to
check in real quick up here.
Can everybody hear me? Great. Okay. So introduction to EJP. The Education Justice Project, as Jasmine noted, is a unit of the University of Illinois. Specifically, we're a unit of the College of Education. We've been located in the College of Ed since 2011. Prior to that, we were in a different unit on campus. Some of you might remember the Center for Democracy. And when the Center for Democracy in a Multiracial Society was disbanded, we moved over to education, and it's been a really wonderful home for us ever since. Although we're a unit in the College of Education, our offices are based at the University YMCA. I know everybody knows where the YMCA is, on Wright Street. We're on the second floor, and we've got a really lovely suite of offices, including a library that includes books on criminal justice and incarceration and reentry. And we're there most days from 9 to 3. There's somebody in the office, and we invite you to walk in and just come by and say hello, check out the books, literally check out the books if you want to borrow books, and hang out. We've always got food there. We've always got chocolate and chips and other yummy things, because we want to make it a welcoming space for people who might be interested in our work or interested in learning more about the issues that concern us all. So what does EJP do? The heart of EJP is our college in prison program, which is based at Danville Correctional Center, a medium security state prison for men located outside Danville, Illinois, about 45-minute drive from campus. EJP is one of about 300 college and prison programs in the United States, which sounds like a lot until you consider there are about 4,000 prisons in the United States. So it's a little bit. Most people who are incarcerated do not have access to college. Most people who are incarcerated in the United States have access to a GED program. In theory. In practice, the lines to enroll in GED programs in our state and in other states are often so long that a person can be incarcerated for years and years and never complete a GED and be released without a GED. That's the case, like I say, here in Illinois. But there are in 300 prisons across the country, programs like EJP that allow those of people who are able to complete a GED while incarcerated, or maybe they come to prison with a GED or even a high school diploma, to enroll in college. Our college program is one of the oldest in the country, and it's one of the biggest, and I want to tell you the different features of it. The heart of our college and prison program is our 4-credit courses. Students who enroll with EJP, and the requirements to enroll with EJP are only that you need 40 credit hours of lower division work. There's no other restriction, and we're very intentional about there being no other restrictions. We don't do a character test. We don't ask for admission essays. We figure at this point people are have very few options, and we want to open doors, not close them. There is a community college at the prison, so the students typically earn those lower division courses, those lower division credits at the community college, currently Danville Area Community College, or DAC, at the prison, and then they enroll to EJP. They enroll in U of I courses for which they receive U of I credit. There's nothing special about the credit. It's University of Illinois credit. They have a UIN number. If they pass the class, they receive credits, and those credits, of course, are transferable to any accredited university in the country. And we have offered anything from 3 to 8 4-credit courses in a given semester. We were severely knocked out by COVID. The program closed down twice because of COVID, and we're crossing our fingers that we're not required to close again this winter. But our program, other programs across the country are kind of stumbling still to get back on our feet. For example, we were locked out earlier this year because of COVID. But we are really, that's, like I say, this has been the heart of the work, is these 4-credit courses, which are offered alongside on the traditional campus calendar. So we have a semester in the fall and a semester in the spring. Courses are for 15 weeks, although people can, also offer shorter courses, as they now increasingly do on campus. We have no online capacity, nor much online interest. We are really clear in our intentions of educating people at the prison and educating ourselves and educating our students on the Urbana-Champaign campus. And we can't do that if we deliver courses via the internet. We need to walk into the prison and be in company, in community with our incarcerated students there. Will this model work for every prison in the country? No, there are prisons hundreds of miles from the nearest college. But we could literally bike to this prison. And given how close we are, we feel a really strong responsibility to be there and to facilitate learning on our campus. More about that later. So 4-credit courses are the heart of what we do, but we also offer a bunch of extracurricular programs. In fact, we have 12 different programs at the prison. And don't worry, I'm not going to go through all 12 of our programs at the prison. Just want to speak to some of them. The photograph that you're looking at now is a photograph of our Language Partners program. This was an initiative that was proposed and developed by our students, which is to say by the EJP students at the prison. It involves EJP students, which is to say U of I students, teaching English, ESL, to men in the general population who are predominantly Spanish speakers. Many EJP students are bilingual. They grew up in Chicago, speaking Spanish and English. Of course, EJP courses are primarily exclusively in English, but they're trained as peer ESL instructors. And you see them here, the men who are standing up are instructing their students in English. That's a program that we're really proud of. It's won an award. We have a guest lecture series. That's me with Leon Dash. You probably know Leon Dash. He's been out to the prison a couple of times. He's also served on our advisory council. We bring out folks from campus and folks from across the country actually to speak with the students on various topics. We have an academic advising program. Jasmine's part of the academic advising program that's relatively new, and it's been so much appreciated by our students to have someone who they can speak with on a regular basis about educational opportunities in the prison and what they should be taking as they navigate their way through EJP and thinking about release. Most of our students expect to be released at some point. And we sure hope all of them will be released at some point. And they're planning now for that eventuality, and the academic advisors are important in helping them think about their academic journeys post-release. The image now is of the mindfulness discussion group in which students read texts related to mindfulness, psychology, neurobiology, and engage in mindfulness practices as well. One of the hallmarks of our program is that we invite our students to think of themselves as scholars and provide opportunities for them to publish. And here's a still from a video in which a group of EJP authors are discussing their publication in fact, it's language partner students in a journal about teaching English, in which they discuss the necessity of teaching English to people who are incarcerated and their methods for doing that. Like I say, there are about half a dozen other programs at the prison that I'm not going to cover in detail, but I want to let you know that we're there at the prison Monday through Friday, morning through night. We have typically anywhere between 60 and 70 people holding clearance to visit the prison, to engage with the students there in these various programs. That work has given rise to other initiatives that are also part of EJP. And our second main initiative is our reentry guide initiative. This was created when our students let us know that they weren't getting very much information when they were being prepared for release, such that when they got out of prison, they didn't know which step to put in front of the other, and that the information they got from the Department of Corrections was out of date. And they said we should put together a little pamphlet for them to help them understand their options upon release. And we said, sure, how much work can a little release pamphlet be? Well, I should have one in front of me to hold up, but you can see it there. It's about a 250-page book that we update every year and distribute thousands to people in the prisons here in Illinois. We recently put out for the first time a national edition of the reentry guide, because we were getting so many requests. About 10% of our requests were coming from people outside of Illinois, which surprised us, but maybe shouldn't have surprised us, because they weren't getting resources from their own state. The Illinois guide contains a lot of resources about places and resources in Illinois, but it also contains, and the meat of it is advice and guidance from people who have been through that journey themselves about what they can expect, how to prepare mentally for release, advice on connecting with family members and loved ones, advice on taking care of yourself, a lot of information about civic engagement. You can vote in Illinois after you get out of prison, how to vote, how to connect with your community, how to share your wisdom and your experience with your neighborhood and with your community, mental health, all sorts of advice that is applicable no matter what state you are getting released in. So we're really happy that our national guide is now out in circulation, and a little overwhelmed, frankly, by the response we've received from it regarding it. We also support entities in other states to produce their own reentry guides. In fact, we're holding a workshop on that when are we holding that workshop? Sometime in the spring. I think it might be in February or March. And we're in the really fortunate position of being able to offer financial support to nonprofit organizations in other states that want to start their own reentry guide, because sometimes just having a few $1,000s to bring people together for those first few printing costs, and to a few $1,000s that will make it easier for you to raise your own money in your own state, that can help them get started. We know what that's like. The Reentry Guide Initiative engages 20 to 30 people every semester, including a team of interns that respond to requests for the Reentry Guide. And you see an intern doing that here. We receive these letters from people in prison well, every day. And we make a point of responding to every single request. We don't have the capacity to respond to all the requests. I mean, we have agencies saying, send us 500 copies of the reentry guide. And we just don't have resources to do that. So we'll say, we'll send you 50 and you print them out yourself. But every single request from a person in prison, we respond to. Every single request from a family member who says, my son is getting out in 2 months. I know that your reentry guide will help me help him get adjusted. We send those. I mean, that's who the guide is really for, right? So we have a team of interns that support that. These are undergraduate students on campus. And I'm making a point of sharing that with you because you may have students who are looking for opportunities to do something like this. And it's a really lovely community. Many of our interns tell us that reading these letters from people in prison, sometimes the letters are short, sometimes the letters are pretty long. And they're often quite heartfelt. Excuse me. So our interns often tell us that those letters, that responding to them is very meaningful work. And it's a way to help in a very physical and real way somebody in prison. We do have a pretty extensive internship program. Some of the interns work for the Reentry Guide Initiative, and other interns do other things in the office, or work with the college and prison program, or work on our policy initiatives. No matter how people are involved with EJP, we make a priority on education and learning. I was speaking to this earlier. It's not just about us providing education to people incarcerated. It's about us learning more and thinking critically about the systems that lead to such incarceration numbers in our country, and about the challenges accompanying that incarceration, and the challenges of reentry, and the criminal legal system more generally. So we have events in our office, talks, some panel discussions. We often invite our alumni back to speak to us about their experiences, and we have larger events for the community. For example, in this picture, you're seeing a video of one of our students at the prison in a pre-recorded talk addressing the audience here in Champaign. And it's really lovely when we can facilitate that kind of communication. There is a WebEx at the prison. It's relatively new. We haven't used it yet. We don't want to use it for instruction, but we're very interested in using it for things like this, in which people can talk to each other. And as you can imagine, we're moving kind of slowly with those requests because it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and we want the answer to be a yes. So we're moving slowly and deliberately. I referred earlier to our policy work, and this is the last area of EJP that I'm going to address right now. We're part of what's called the Freedom to Learn campaign. In fact, we initiated the Freedom to Learn campaign after there were some issues of academic censorship in our program at Danville a few years ago, when the prison administration ordered books removed on Black history, civil rights, slavery from our library shelves. We weren't able to get any response from them, so we started the campaign in coalition with other partners and allies and prison education programs across the state. We have had a lot of success in moving slowly and deliberately towards a legislative action that would better protect higher education in prison. We started off with wanting to protect academic freedom for the programs and for the students that they serve. But the scope of the campaign has broadened to including things like putting transfer holds on students so that in the middle of the semester, they can't be transferred to another facility where there is no education program and not able to finish the semester. Incarcerated students' Bill of Rights. Right now, it's not unusual for a correctional officer, for example, to come into the cell and complain that the student has too many books in their cell and discard the books, discard their homework, discard their writing. It makes it hard for them to continue in the program in a way that gives them confidence that they should be in the program. So that campaign is supported very much by our new director of policy and research. And we are building it out and working closely with Carol Ammons. You know, Carol Ammons is the state rep that represents the University of Illinois, and hoping to work with her to introduce 3 bills in the coming session related to higher education in prison. That follows on the work of the task force on higher education in prison, which Carol submitted a bill to create and which successfully completed its work earlier this year. And the governor recently released that report. Throughout, what we try to do is center the voices of our students, our incarcerated students. They continue to form the heart of EJP. And we think of some ways of ourselves as the Leadership Institute. So many of our students have gone out and taken roles with nonprofits or started their own nonprofits or working in government in progressive capacities. And our students typically are serving long sentences for serious crimes. We're not seeing the people in and out on 18 months for DUIs. We're seeing people who are, most of our students were incarcerated before the age of 18. Most of them have stepped down to Danville from maximum security prisons like Pontiac and Menard. And we see them in the last bit of their sentence. So maybe they've spent already 10 or 15 or 20 years in prison. They're very confident, they're purposeful, they have typically worked hard on themselves, and they see an opportunity to work with us to continue that process of becoming the person they feel they were meant to be. And it's an honor to be able to work with them. So what's next? I want to tell you briefly about 3 areas that we are intending to make strides on in the coming years. And as I indicated at the beginning, I think some of these might be of particular interest to you, given your work on campus. These efforts involve our what's happening outside of the prison, and in particularly involve the well-being and the educational journeys of our former students. We call them alumni. Although we do not offer a degree at Danville Correctional Center, we use that term alum to describe people who have been through the program, taken courses or other activities with us, and now are released. Most of our students, as you can imagine, return to the Chicago area. And we have occasional events in Chicagoland. We also often bring them back to Champaign virtually or in real life to speak to us, to speak to interns for learning opportunities, to speak to classes on campus. They're very keen on speaking to classes on campus. When the entity that invites them isn't able to pay them a speaker honorarium, EJP will pay them an honorarium because we feel that their time, we know that their time is valuable, and they have a lot of wisdom to share, and we want to encourage their voices getting out there. One of the things they've found really hard, and it's not unique to them, people, formerly incarcerated people across the country, there's a lot of research on this, have a hard time getting into college upon release. Even if they've been to college in prison, they have a hard time enrolling in college upon release. Even if they have attended a specific university while incarcerated, and that university provided the credits, they have a hard time upon release applying for, registering for, attending in person that campus. We have never had an EJP student, and we've had, I think we have 120 alums so far. Not all of them apply to go to U of I at Urbana-Champaign. Most of them wanted to live in Chicago with their families and loved ones. But several of them have applied to Urbana-Champaign, and not a single one has gotten in. Even when faculty have written letters of recommendation and support, and it's been clear that the reason that they haven't been able to get in is because of their background. So there are some far forward-thinking programs on the East Coast and the West Coast, Cal State Fullerton, Rutgers University, Cal State LA, who have developed programs to make it easier for their administration to understand the value of admitting people with diverse backgrounds, and much lived real experience to the campus, and to provide services and resources to those students, not just to get them in, but to get them out again successfully, to ensure that they complete. We're launching such a program here at Urbana-Champaign, and I'm really happy to announce that our first program director is Mike Braun, who is an alum of the program. He was released actually earlier this year. And he was just, his background check, you know, we have a background check for people who want to work at the U of I. His background check went through yesterday. So the road is cleared for him to be hired, and we hope that by the end of the month, he will be working with us in a part-time capacity as a program manager to what we're calling the prison to gown pathways. At this point, our goal is to better understand the experiences of students currently on the U of I campus who have been formerly incarcerated in jails or in prison. To understand what their needs are, what resources they would find most supportive. Now, that research exists on other campuses, so we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to learn. We know that housing is a really big problem, a challenge. We know that financial aid can be a challenge. We know that socialization on campus and peer-to-peer support seems to be really helpful in those programs that already exist. But we want to do the work on the ground because we want to be able to make it clear to our administration and other stakeholders that we have investigated these questions at Illinois and we know what's needed. We have a bit of funding from a foundation in Chicago, the Joyce Foundation, and from the OVC DEI, Office of the Vice Chancellor for DEI here on campus, Sean Garrick's office, to undertake this. And we hope and expect that we will have some wonderful data to share with both of those entities to make the case that the program should continue, because the plan is to start recruiting people first from community colleges that have been through prison earlier, because we want to kind of move slowly and deliberately. We want this to be a success. And then once that is successful, and we have no reason to expect it won't be, it's been successful in other places, to recruit directly from prisons. When people are coming out, say, one of the places you should consider living upon your release, if you're serious about getting a quality bachelor's degree and continuing your education, is Urbana-Champaign and attending the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And we have the resources to ensure your success. It is tremendously exciting for us. It's also very interesting in that we've already gotten pushback. So I'm kind of careful about how I speak about it. We expect that there will be expressions of concern raised by some people. And it's really important that we're prepared. I'm learning a lot from my colleagues in California and New Jersey and other places about how to, again, educate people on the importance of educational equity in all of its forms. That leads to a second initiative I'll speak about very briefly. Because we understand that the campus is a wide and diverse place with many units, some of which are very animated by a spirit of equity, and understand historical patterns of injustice, and others which are less so. We've undertaken to do a campus scan. That's what we're calling it, in which we are exploring what different offices and units on campus, how they might relate or engage with students who have been formerly incarcerated, and what their attitudes and processes and policies in relation to that population are. We're actually starting our focus right now with HR, human resources, because that's been the area that we have run into the most challenges, not with respect to students, but with respect to hiring people, because we hire a lot of folks and we aim to hire people who have formerly been incarcerated, and it is difficult. It is difficult. So the scan involves not just student experiences, but staff experiences as well on campus. We're interested on the part of students and staff who have a background, have been through jail, or haven't been to jail or prison, but have a criminal record. We also want to identify those units that are most likely to be sources of support and welcome and understanding, especially for students and for staff. So that's our campus scan, and we are really delighted that our Director of Policy and Research is undertaking that, again, with the support of students. So again, if you know students that are interested in doing research, it's an IRB approved project, and it's going to continue into next year. Finally, the last area I'll share with you is that we, as I said earlier, continue to work with State Representative Carol Ammons, who represents the University of Illinois, on legislation that follows through the recommendations that were made by the Task Force on Higher Education and Prison in relation to things that our state can do to expand access to high quality higher education for incarcerated people and ensure access to higher education upon release. We see this as a multi-year step. The first 3 bills are going to be the low-hanging fruit, and moving forward from there. And I'm happy to answer questions about that if you have specific questions about the legislative agenda. Again, that's my contact information. I've made several plugs for students to get involved, but I'm not only interested in students getting involved. I'm also here because many of you might be interested in the work, and also because I think that this unit is a unit that I would definitely count among the friendlies on campus, among the units that is going to be understanding of the needs of our students. Not all of our students are classified as minority students. They're not all racial minorities, but of course, most of them are. Most of them are Black and brown, right? Okay. And we seriously and sincerely desire partners that can help us as we welcome more of them to campus, who can support them and help guide us in making their experiences here as successful as possible. So with that, I'll stop, and thank you again for your time, and look forward to any questions or discussion that might follow from that.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing. So we will open the floor for any questions that anyone may have about anything that she shared or anything that you're wanting to have a little bit more knowledge about. And then you can always put questions in the chat as well, if you didn't want to turn on your mic.
So actually, I guess my question would be for you, Jasmine, in terms of when you're looking at the academic advising component for the program, how difficult is it to advise if the student is not interested in staying within the state of Illinois?
So I think that that is a really good question. However, I do not do academic advising for EJP. I am actually on the Reentry Guide Initiative team. So I work on the writing and the research of the Reentry Guide. So the Mapping Your Future guides that she was showing, I work on that team to do the writing and research for and putting together the guides that are distributed statewide and beyond. I have no experience with the academic advising piece. So my apologies.
No problem whatsoever.
Yeah, my apologies. I know that I think like Dr. Moore goes inside and he teaches a class with EJP. And then I think Stephen Cox, our partner over in LAS, he's a academic advisor that goes inside with EJP. But yeah, I'm not a part of that team, so I cannot speak to that experience. I apologize.
So, Dr. Ginsburg, other than the obvious in terms of the students having a record, have institutions given other reasons for barriers for entry?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. And typically the concern is expressed and couched in terms of public safety and the interest in protecting students.
Even if it's minimum security and it's non-violent offense?
I can't speak to that in part because, as you know, the administration at our university and all universities sort of cloud the application process in some
A firewall.
capacity. Yeah. What we know is that it is hard for people to get in unless there are concerted efforts made to create pathways to the campus. I think that, my feeling is that even if somebody's incarcerated even if a 40-year-old man is incarcerated or spent time in prison, spent 30 years in prison for a crime he committed in his teens, people in their teens, people in their early 20s are not the same people they are when they get out of prison. And the whole point of prison, I'm not a believer in prisons, but the point of prisons is to prepare somebody to be a part of our community. If we're going to keep people in prison, then after they come out, say, well, actually, thanks for spending all that time, but you still can't participate, then we're obviously doing something wrong. I mean, there's the interesting thing, of course, is that the data shows that formerly incarcerated students outperform traditional students on campus, which is what you'd expect, right? They're not taking that for granted. They're not coming to prison to meet somebody or because their parents are forcing them. They're coming when they could often, the pressure is on for them to get out of prison and get a job right away, but they're making a choice that in education isn't worth the investment, and I'm going to work really, really hard on that investment. So they academically outperform traditional students. They also, there's so little data but the data that's there doesn't show that they pose any more threat to campus security or safety than anybody else. And as we know from horrific events that are taking place on our campus, that kind of screening doesn't, that's not what we should be screening for. I'm looking in the
There's a question in the chat, and it says, what sort of courses are provided and who teaches the courses?
Thank you for that question, Grace. So there are typically upper division courses that are U of I courses. We accept applications twice a year from people on the Urbana-Champaign campus and in the community. In order to teach a course with EJP, you have to have the same qualifications as you would need to teach that course on Urbana-Champaign. So typically that's faculty members or advanced graduate students. Fortunately, we live in a community in which there are many people with PhDs who aren't affiliated with the U of I, who live in our community, and they often will also teach. And we've had instructors, faculty and grad students from EIU, Eastern Illinois, Illinois State as well get involved. But I'd say 90% of the people teaching our courses are, maybe 80%, are faculty and advanced graduate students at the U of I, who sometimes it's really fun when they'll teach the same course at the prison and on campus at the same time. And that's cool because they can talk to each course of students about what the other class said and how they responded and how maybe the assignments are coming up a little bit differently. They're U of I courses. We limit them to 15 students each for pedagogical reasons. They typically work a little bit more like seminars and courses because they only meet once a week. We tend to sit in a circle, and because these are adult students and they share characteristics of adult students generally, they're a lot of life experience, they're well-read, they're very serious, and quite rigorous. Continuing to disadvantage folks after they get out is punishing someone yeah, Jordan, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not actually Dr. Ginsburg, but thank you for the respect. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm interested to know how you came to this work. I'd also be interested in your thoughts on ways to help folks in our immediate sphere of influence understand the importance of. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Jerry, for that question. I got involved in prison education work when I was a graduate student at Berkeley. I have, oh, thank you. Marie, no, Marie Jury.
Jury.
Jury, thank you. Jury, thank you. I was a grad student at Berkeley, and I have a very vivid memory of walking along a hallway and seeing a sign, a flyer on a notice board for higher education, for people who are interested in teaching at San Quentin State Prison. At that time, I wasn't looking for that. I was very interested in prison abolition, but I went to the meeting because I thought maybe they'd be talking about prison abolition at the meeting. So I went to the meeting and they weren't talking about prison abolition, and I got up to go. And somebody came over to me and asked if I would be interested in teaching a course. And I wasn't. But I said I was because I was the only person of color in the meeting. And this was back in the 1990s, but even back in the 1990s, I and others knew that incarceration disproportionately impacts people of color, African Americans and Latinx, and Indigenous peoples in particular. And it did seem to me that it was appropriate to have, to the extent you can, people of color teaching. And I could understand and respect why she came to me when she saw me getting up to go. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to her, because it must have taken a bit of courage to come up, and she didn't know me, and say, hey, before you leave, we're wondering if you'd like to teach a course. But it obviously changed my life. That intersection, that intervention changed my life, and changed a lot of people's lives, frankly. So I don't remember who it was that said that to me, but I so often salute her in my head for having the courage. And it reminds me often about the necessity of reaching out to people like you and saying, hey, have you considered doing this? Maybe have the same kind of impact on them that it had on me. So I said, okay, I'll teach for a semester, and then I'm not going to teach in this program anymore. And I taught a course, and I was blown away by the experience. I didn't have a big perspective like I do now on teaching in prison. I just knew that it was really intellectually stimulating and it felt meaningful. So I continued to teach throughout my years at Berkeley, where I got my PhD. And when I came here in my job interview, I said, if I come here, I'd be interested in doing a college and prison program. Is there one already? And if there's not, how would you feel about me starting one? And because people will say anything to you in a job interview, they said, sure, we don't have one, we can start one. How much work can that be? I'm really grateful to the person who said that to me. He's no longer here. So I came and I was able to work with others to get this program started here, with a lot of help from, at that point, other programs across the country. Not as many as there are now, but they really helped us a lot in guiding our steps and figuring out what constitutes quality in an education program. You can't lower your standards, can't expect students to accept anything other than the same sort of instruction that you're going to provide on your main campus that needs to be available to incarcerated students to the extent it can be. Can you share about the program's impact on reducing the students returning after release and continued community connections for the alums that were highlighted? How much? Okay, those are two good questions. Jennifer, thanks for those questions. Okay. So Jennifer's asking about outcomes, program outcomes, and about the impact in particular on family members, in addition on family members. I'll start with that one. We're in the process of developing a comprehensive evaluation for EJP. Right now, the students fill out ISIS forms, and students in each program do evaluations at the end of the semester. But this will be a very comprehensive, this is growing into a very comprehensive evaluation that has been developed by our students and a group of alumni in collaboration with an evaluator based out of University of Wisconsin, who's wonderful. Her name is Nicole Robinson, who is very much committed to those most impacted by the program, leading the evaluation of the program. So we're still in the process of working out some of the paperwork to get that moving again, because Nicole actually got very sick during COVID and we had to put that on hold. But one of the things we're hoping is that, and expecting, is that her evaluation, which will be on an ongoing basis, will allow us to have hard data or soft data really, to address this question. So I can only address it anecdotally at this point. And anecdotally, we hear a lot about the impact on positive impacts on family members and loved ones. Many of our students, most of our students, are the first in their family to attend college, and they tell us often about the impact it has on their loved ones, that it encourages them to attend college. When they have people in college, they will discuss assignments and discuss books that they're reading together. It gives them something, as somebody was saying this just the other day, that that prison is kind of like Groundhog Day, and that, you know, the same thing happens every day, every day, every day. And when your family calls you and they say, what's new? And there's nothing new. It's the same thing every day. And it can sometimes make it discouraging for family members to call. They can't call you, obviously, you call them. It can make it discouraging for them to pick up when they know it's you calling, because there's nothing in that conversation that's any different. But it changes when you're in a higher education and prison program, because then it's no longer Groundhog Day. There are things happening. There are books that they're reading. There are discussions that you're having. There's tests that you're having, and you're anxious about the tests. There's something to talk about, and something. So just even if you fail in a college and prison program, it provides something for you to connect with your family about. And I don't mean to be facetious, because we know that one of the main factors for successful reentry is the connections that may take place with the family members during incarceration. So providing something for people to think about and talk about together is huge. But the substance of what you're talking about is also huge. Talking about higher education in prison, and the way we often talk about it is changing the narrative. So for so many of our students, the narratives have been, I'm in prison, my dad is in prison, my older brother's in prison, my uncle was in prison, my granddad was in prison. This is what my family does. This is what the men in our family do. The men in our family spend some time in prison. And they very intentionally, many of our students very intentionally change the narrative. I'm the first to go to U of I, but I expect my nephew to be the second and my grandson to be the third. And that's the plan now. We are college people. Maybe it's not going to be U of I, maybe it's going to be Illinois State, maybe it's going to be Chicago State. But we are now building a tradition in our family of the people going to prison. I mean, going to university, because we're smart. Because we're smart, and because we have ambitions for ourselves. There's so many lovely stories I can tell of, like one of our students whose sister wasn't planning to go to college, and he enrolled with us, and he kept on teasing her and bugging her and saying, how come, you know, I'm in prison and I'm in college and you can't figure out a way to get into college?
Yeah.
She said, shut up, I enrolled already. And then she graduated. I mean, that's just, maybe she would have done it anyway. But it seems to be a very positive thing. If you believe, as I do, that college is a good thing, it's a good force, it's a liberalizing force, it's a progressive force. It's not for everybody, but it's for everybody who wants to attend college, thinks they could be successful in college, thinks there's something for them. I'm for anything that will open those doors and make it easier and encourage them to attend, help them think of themselves as somebody who is college material, so to speak, because that's one of the things that happens. Students and their family members start thinking of themselves as, hey, yeah, we go to college, we go to university, we're getting our degrees. The other outcomes that we're interested in measuring for EJP students is civic connection, how much they're connected upon release to their community, involved in civic activities, civic engagement, voting, working with nonprofits, doing volunteer work, their sense of agency, how much power they think they have in the world to make changes, whether at a micro or a macro scale, earnings, job satisfaction, recidivism, which refers to the rate at which people who were formerly incarcerated return to prison. Recidivism is a really fuzzy metric, though, because it also, there are a couple of reasons recidivism is a fuzzy metric. One is because people are counted in recidivism figures even if they are returned to prison for violating parole. And people can be violated be charged with violating parole if they sneeze in a way that offends the parole officer. The other reason recidivism is a fuzzy metric is because we know that most of our students, previous research shows that most of our students are not likely to recidivate in any case. People who recidivate tend to be younger, tend to be in and out of prison. People serve older people, students in their 30s and 40s for the most part, serving long sentences for serious crimes tend not to recidivate. So programs that claim that they're successful, education programs that claim that they're successful because they're lower the recidivism rate are, there's a bit of disingenuity there, I believe, if they don't know if maybe they don't know the research well, because their students were never strong candidates for recidivism in the first place. And recidivism is a really low bar. It only measures going back to prison. It doesn't measure success. It doesn't measure mortality even. If you don't recidivate if you're dead. So people who, the suicide rates are higher for people who have been to prison. So those are the kinds of things. Rates of depression are higher. You might not be in prison, but you're living under a bridge somewhere. So you wouldn't be counted up in the recidivism numbers, but we would not count that as a success. And the metrics that we plan to use are much more ambitious because we want our students not just to survive, we want them to thrive, we want them to run for office, we want them to write books, we want them to fulfill their dreams. We want them to do what they want to do in the world. So it's a great question, thank you. Can you provide any information regarding EJP students enrolled in community and then transferring to your other still bearers? Oh, that's a great question, Courtney. So I can't provide hard data because we don't have any hard data. I referred to the task force on higher education in prison earlier. I was a member of the task force. And one of the things we did at the task force was request data from the Illinois Department of Corrections on things like community college enrollment upon re-entry, community college completion upon re-entry, numbers of people enrolled in college and prison across the state. And they don't have the data. That's one of the legislative items that we plan to be addressing, in fact, is requiring the Department of Corrections to better track, with the help of the Illinois Board of Higher Education and the Illinois Community College Board, to better track outcomes, enrollment and outcomes of people who are in and out of prison. So I don't have any data because, and the Department of Corrections doesn't have any data on people enrolling into community college. But anecdotally, again, I can tell you it's a lot easier. Oh my gosh, it's so much easier to get into community college. If you're for people with a background. And that's what's so hard for us because our students are taking upper division courses. They're not, the community college is not the best place for them to start upon reentry. They should be starting at a four-year institution like ours. And I will say UIC is UIC has graduated a number of our students. It's much more welcoming. Anyway, I won't say much more about that. But sometimes we do find that our students upon release will go to a community college, even though they don't need to be in a community college, because they will open the doors to them and allow them to get a footing before they transfer from that community college to a four-year institution. And so in answer to your question, there may be barriers, I'm not aware, but I know that there's a lot more success for people getting into community college and getting to the 4 years. Thank you for the good questions. Do you guys see, yes, if any of you have any experiences that you would be willing to share with students who have, leaving them anonymous, obviously, who have been formerly incarcerated that you've worked with? Any particular challenges come to mind for that population, or maybe they don't even disclose, they tend not to disclose?
I don't necessarily have any experience with students that were formerly incarcerated, but there are times where I have met a student that was currently going through some sort of legal issues. So yes, so I've had that experience, but I have not had any students that were formerly incarcerated just yet, from my experience.
And that experience is so different when they're already an Illinois student or a student at a university campus versus trying to get into an institution when you've already have an established record. I find serving on the conduct committee here, you're much more forgiving when you're an existing student, with a few exceptions. So that's in relation to our policies and procedures. Now, if a student exits our campus because of what they've done on our campus, but have been involved in the legal system, that part I don't know in terms of having experience of what it looks like for them to re-enter that way.
Can you possibly restate your question? Because I do have a student that he's a transfer student that was previously incarcerated. And I want to be able to answer your question correctly.
Thank you for asking. I'm interested in what students who have been formerly incarcerated may be reporting as particular challenges or supports that they experience on the Urbana-Champaign campus.
So one of the issues that we were having was finding housing. And we did I had to contact people that actually work with EJP to try to figure out a housing situation for him, because he was leaving the I guess I don't know if this is the technical term, but it was like a halfway house. And so he needed to move and be into another space. And that was a lot more challenging than I expected. That was probably the most physical barrier that we had to overcome. The other was just being, the others were more related to being a transfer student and being slightly older, right? So, and still being an undergrad. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it seems that housing is a persistent and really stubborn problem. We're really fortunate that we received a small grant that will allow us, once we launch the program, to provide housing at the YMCA, which is where our offices are housed. You might know that the third floor of the YMCA is a housing unit. It's like a dormitory. It's not university property. The university YMCA is not a university building. And we're excited about that because even though, as I say, we haven't done the research so far about needs on the Urbana campus, it's so clear from across the country, from what you've just said, Sean, that that housing is going to be maybe obstacle number one, or obstacle number two. Getting in will be obstacle number one, and then obstacle number two.
But academically, he's doing very well.
That's great. That's great. And it sounds like he went directly. Did he go directly from prison to the community college, or did he spend some years doing something else first?
That is a good question, and I did not ask. I will tell you that I met him in one of our programs for new students over the summer. He introduced himself. I asked, because obviously he wasn't he didn't look like he was 18, so I assumed he might have been a parent. We struck up a conversation and I said, I don't know if you'll be one of my students, but immediately extended that hand for support and understanding that, there are just going to be some dynamics being a first-year student here that you're going to need to overcome. So we've kind of developed our relationship in that space. And yeah. So. I don't know if he was, I know he went to community college. I just don't know if it was after his incarceration or while he was incarcerated.
Yeah, thank you. Do students have the option of approaching your office for support, or in addition to the academic advising they get in the colleges?
So yes, they do. We offer a variety of services. So our freshmen are typically the ones that we will provide the type of mentoring services that Sean is referring to. Although we have full-time staff on duty Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and you don't need an appointment. So you come through the door, whether that is at our facility, or we have hours at the Native American Cultural Center. We have hours at BNAC. We have hours at La Casa. Again, you don't need an appointment. All you need is to be able to come through the door and have a question.
And maybe this isn't the time to ask, but at some point, I would love to get affirmation that students who have been formerly incarcerated would be, that there's some.
It's open to any Illinois student.
And I guess what I'm searching for the words for is that we know that there are special particular needs that are faced by students who are formerly incarcerated. And we hope to better understand the particular sets of needs that they have. As they're coming from a predominantly minority institution, which is the prison, to a predominantly, majority white institution. And that's in itself great. Yeah, a challenge. Coming from prison to release, spending first time, many of our students have never been on a college campus. I don't mean as students, I mean, just as going to an event or walking through a college campus to get something to eat. They've never been on a college campus. So perhaps as we get closer to imagining that to the day when we'll be bringing people onto campus and welcoming them, maybe that would be an opportunity to invite another discussion about what we've learned about their particular needs and anxieties. Maybe we could even bring a couple of students to share.
Yeah,
not necessarily from here.
Jasmine oversees right now our advising and mentoring services. So you could either connect with Jasmine or you can connect with Jasmine and myself, and we'd be happy to sit down and have a conversation.
That would be beautiful.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I'm excited.
beautiful. Thank you.
Rebecca, I'm not sure if you're open to sharing or if you would like to, but did you want to talk about the EJP scholarship at all?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for that gentle push. So we have, let me also just take a second to put the to pull up the link. If I can put it in the chat. So EJP has a scholarship, an academic scholarship that we offer every year. The deadline is November 15th. And the application package is in the link there. It's $1,000 for people who have been impacted by incarceration. That includes family members of people who are currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated people who have, so Sean, your student would be eligible to apply. Family members of staff of the Department of Corrections, and that might feel strange, but it's clearly helpful in helping us develop relationships with people at the Department of Corrections. And it also something we believe in. We want the doors of we want broadened access. We don't want anybody to be in our world education. In my vision, education would be free, including for people who have different political beliefs than I do. It's a need-based scholarship, but the bar is very low. We just want to a short essay explaining why there is need, confirmation that you are at an institution or ability to provide such confirmation. It doesn't have to be for the U of I, obviously, it can be for any accredited university or college in the country. Thank you very much, Jasmine. I should have put that up.
No problem, no problem.
And you know, we really want to spread the word about this scholarship a lot. We used to have a lot more applications in the past few years. Applications have gone down, but we want to give the money out. So please, if you know anybody that would be eligible, we would really appreciate getting applications for that.
Yeah. And Sean said that he was sending this information to his student as you were speaking about the scholarship. So
I'm really
I'm
happy.
really happy that you were able to share as well as share the link.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We know, I know I teach a course every spring called the History of the Prison, and on our campus. And I've taken to doing an anonymous poll at the beginning of the semester about why people are taking the class and what personal connection they have to incarceration. And increasingly, about a half of the students in the class, and this is a class of 100 students or so, are saying that they know somebody or a family member, or they themselves have been incarcerated or have a criminal record, or have spent time in jail. So we know that our students, and then throughout the semester, of course, students will come up to me and say, this is what my brother is going through. I wanted to know that, that my uncle got out last week, or you talked about the reentry guide some more time. Can you please send that to my aunt? I think it should be really useful. Our students, all of us, and I think the students that you work with in particular are impacted by incarceration. Thanks, Sean. So in addition to that reentry guide, in addition to the reentry guide, in addition to the scholarship, we have a reentry website that I'm going to try. I'll put the that up here as well. Again, if you have students who would find those resources helpful, I encourage you to forward it to them. The saying is that when a person spends time in prison, their family serves the sentence with them. In terms of the loss of income, obviously, but also in terms of the loss of companionship and the pain of separation, the social stigma, the confusion, the embarrassment, there's so many ways in which our students and others are impacted by incarceration. And there fortunately are resources out there that can help. Do you also work with graduate students?
We used to employ them, and we do to some degree still, but in terms of providing any sort of services and support, that's typically through the graduate college because they'll have a similar unit.
That's what I thought, but I thought I'd ask.
But they're nowhere near as good as us,
Oh, I know that.
just in case there was any questions.
Come on, Sean, for the plug. Do we have any other questions that we would like to share with Rebecca, or any other comments? Okay.
I really appreciate the invitation to reach out again as we develop our program. Again, it's called the Prison to Gown Pathway Program, because we expect and hope that our students will be able to get some needed support and sustenance from you. And I look forward to exploring that, what that might look like. And thank you in advance. Thank you in advance. I mean, when I talk to students at the prison, when I talk to EJP students, they ask questions. I mean, they know, they get letters, right? And they see, and they know that people who get out and attend college on the outside face weird questions and suspicion and sometimes lack of support. And they ask, you know, at U of I, who's there for us? Who's going to be supporting us? Or where can we go if we want? I mean, they know they can come to us, but where else can we go? Where we know that people will be understanding and welcoming and not judgmental. And I definitely include you, I include OMSA in that. And I'm grateful to be able to do that, because not every unit acts like you or looks like you or has the sensitivities that you guys do. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, Rebecca, we thank you so much for your time and everything that you were able to share. If there are any other questions, then I'll be sure to gather those and to reach back out to you soon.
Thank you. It's been great. I know, we had it scheduled for 2020. I was scheduled to speak to you guys.
It's great, yeah.
I think it's March or February or March of 2020.
Yep.
We said,
It was March. And then
maybe not. So I'm so
That's-
happy. I'm so
That's when I joined EJP too.
Pardon me.
That's when I joined EJP too. I joined EJP in 2020.
It's been a ride.
Yeah.
Ride. Thank you so much. It's really been lovely. I'm grateful to spend the time with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, you have a good day, Rebecca.
Thank you. You too, Kimberly. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jasmine.
Before we leave, I wanted to turn the floor over to Dr. Young. Dr. Young, did you want to spend some time, just a reminder or a plug about tomorrow's event? You're on mute.
Sure. Yeah, sorry, the button wasn't clicking. Yeah, so looking at who is left in the room, Jasmine, Maurice, and Grace, and Jaree, we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and Sean. There's more people here than I thought. Yeah, tomorrow, if you can be there at 9 to help set up. And it should be a great time. Of course, everyone is welcome. As a reminder, there's a little bit of parking behind the building. There's a little bit of parking across the street.